The San Francisco 49ers have the #1 easiest schedule in the NFL in 2025 and the #6 most draft capital of any team in the NFL draft. In fact, it's the most draft capital they've had since 2019. But their roster might have the most needs it's had since 2019 as well. And this team is off its most disappointing season under Kyle Shanahan. Expected to win the NFC West, the 49ers went 6-11 and missed the playoffs for the first time since 2020. After 4 NFC Championship appearances and 2 Super Bowl trips in the past 5 years, a big rebound is needed to maximize the 49ers championship window given Purdy's low cap hit. The roster has talent, but it's not cheap, including well-paid players like Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, Fred Warner, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey. They must hit on some of these draft picks to add solid talent on the cheap.
Yeah, I think that when we were looking at the 49ers, when you and I are discussing the 49ers, we are in this kind of pivotal moment for them as they look to, switch this roster and transition this roster into what the next stage will be with Brock Purdy on a second contract. And, they lost some really key guys on defense, or players that have been key guys for them. I know you don't think that losing Drake Greenlaw and Charvarius Ward and Talanoa Hufanga, I believe I got that right. I don't believe you. I know that you don't think that matters. I particularly think that matters. They lost those guys.
I think Ward matters. I think the other two aren't as big of losses as you.
Fair enough. I mean, you could be wrong, but you look at it, and this is all part of that transition, right? As we move into this next stage of kind of where they are. And as I look at this defense specifically, I think you look at the defensive line, the edge rushers, and you start to see kind of how bad it's gotten there. Obviously they have, Nick Bosa, but we saw Leonard Floyd leave. Who's really behind him? Are we relying on Yetur Gross-Matos? I'm not going to say bad things about him because he's obviously also a Penn State legend, but who are they relying on there? Who are they relying on long-term there? That's a real problem. They probably thought that this was going to be, Drake Jackson, but he obviously has the injury issues that have showed up. And then along the defensive line, you lose Malik Collins, you lose Javon Hargrave. You already weren't great there to begin with. Arguably you need 2 starters. And then, like I said, they did lose some players in the other parts, further back in the defense. I think they're probably going to be fine. Maybe they're going to add some, at corner. Maybe they look to add some at safety. We'll see what they think about, Jair Brown. Again, we're just going through all these Penn State players. We'll see how they feel about that. But overall, this defensive front, that's one spot they really have to focus on if they're hoping this defense, takes a step forward, with Robert Saleh back in command of it.
Yeah, we're seeing the 49ers have to calibrate for this, pending contract extension and, start to really gear up for this pending contract extension that Brock Purdy is going to get because he's in the last year of his rookie contract. There's no 5th-year option. They have the franchise tag available, obviously, if something stalls out there. But you start to see the moving pieces because they do have a top-heavy roster. I mean, you look at the guys that are still on the roster. I mean, they still have Trent Williams making a lot of money. You still have Fred Warner making a lot of money. You have Bosa making a lot of money. They're going to have to potentially pay George Kittle. Christian McCaffrey's making a lot of money for his position. They extended Brandon Ayuk last year. So when you have those contracts, you have to lose some of those pieces that are maybe some of the glue guys that you talked about, the Greenlaws and the Wards. Those guys end up they end up becoming expendable because you have such this high dollar allocation to those other players, and then you're going to have to pay a quarterback now, which they haven't had to do for a number of years, and they're just gearing up for that. I'm with you though. I think they should focus on the defensive side of the ball early. If they do dabble, it would be offensive line would be a spot where they would go, but this is a team that I hope they don't fall into the trap of saying they've got draft capital, let's be aggressive and trade up, because you've started to hear them in whispers of potentially trying to move up for a guy. They have 4 top 100 picks. They have 7 top picks in the top 150. They need to buckshot those because you're going to miss on some of these guys, but you definitely want to fire your ammunition in those spots, especially when you're trying to get pass rushers and offensive linemen. Trent Williams is going to be 37 years old. He finally, missed a lot of time last year. He missed 7 games. We saw the impact that he had on when he was out. Colton McKivitz is in the final year of his contract at right tackle. They do lose Aaron Banks, but again, you can find interior linemen. They found one last year in Dominic Pooney, but the offensive tackle, and for the future, if you're going to be paying a quarterback, you want that offensive tackle spot lined up. That would be the one spot if they're going to get aggressive on offense to kind of calibrate around. George Kittle, also pending free agent after this season, not going to be cheap. So that's the price of success, right? And the 49ers have built a team that's playing for Super Bowls, and they do have that good schedule to lean on them, but they have more holes than they've had in recent years. And fortunate for them that they have that draft capital to try to plug these holes. Don't be cute and try to trade up though.
And so that is my major concern because of kind of the history we have here. And like, to your point, where they need, like, defensive line stands out, and you can include edge in that, stand out as these big needs. That happens to be, I'm not a draft scout. I would never pretend to be. I'm not watching these guys close, but as I read people I trust, that appears to be part of the draft that is deep, right? So we want to take multiple shots there. We don't want to trade up and try to, I guess unless you're trading up for Abdul Carter. We can't get away from the Penn State. Just great job, James Franklin, recruiting. But if if you're trading up for Abdul Carter, but they're not probably going to be able to do that and get that high, you want to take multiple of these guys. And you really want to take that shot and really build up this defensive line and build it up cheap, because that's the key. If we're going to win on this second contract for Brock Purdy, we're going to have to build these guys up cheaply. We're going to have to really hit on these draft, and their draft history is, it's checkered, right? Are we going to spend another third round pick on a running back? I don't know. You maybe even could say that they need to with,
they're going to take a running back. Believe it.
Will it be the third round? I don't know. But yeah, you want to take multiple shots on the defensive line and the edge. That's really where they need to focus. Offensive line as well. And it just so happens they've got a lot of draft picks, and it just so happens that those three areas probably play into the strength, at least the depth of this draft. And so they're in a good spot. Like you said, they just need to make sure they do the right things as we get here.
Yeah, the last 3 years, they've had 30th, 28th, and 21st draft capital. And if you have such little draft capital and you're not hitting on enough of those picks at a high enough rate, then you are going to be in a position like they are right now, where they have some top end talent through some guys they maybe acquired via trade or drafted years and years ago that are being well paid. And then you don't have much beyond that because you haven't had enough swings at the plate to really accumulate some ability to miss enough. And now they finally have that sixth most draft capital. So they've got to hit on some of these guys because that roster is really top end loaded from a dollar perspective.